All right, welcome back to the channel. If you can see from the title of the video, the question in this video is going to be, should the US elect a woman president, or a women president, as people like to say these days? Now, before we get into it, there's a couple interesting news stories that I saw recently in my news feed. This first one is definitely kind of indicative of the state of the US as currently, where we actually have South African refugees moving back to South Africa from the United States. We'll just check out a bit of this real quick.
Naomi Sapphire was born in South Africa and lived for 2 decades in the United States. She came back home for a holiday and realized how much she missed this place.
You cannot dictate what makes your heart happy. So you leave and then you come back because ultimately this is home.
Last year, Sapphire left North Carolina for a seaside town in South Africa's Western Cape. Now, she says her 3 children spend more time outdoors, health insurance is affordable, and she prefers the schools. She's among thousands of white South Africans coming back from abroad, despite U.S. President Donald Trump's statements that South Africa's white minority is being persecuted by the country's black majority government.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa.
The Trump administration is ramping up its new refugee program for white South Africans, focusing on Afrikaners, the descendants of Dutch settlers, such as Sapphire and her family. About 3,500 South Africans have entered the United States as refugees since the program started in May 2025. Pretoria says there is no evidence of discrimination or persecution against whites. Many white South Africans and Afrikaners have welcomed Trump's support, but insisted they nevertheless want to remain in their country. And others who left decades ago are now returning. Anton van Heerden is an employment agent who has been trying to help returnees keep their jobs abroad by shifting to remote work. He said inquiries from white South Africans seeking to return had jumped 70% in the past 6 months.
We have also asked these people why they're coming back, and we got a lot of different reasons. The obvious ones would be whether family, friends, the vibe in South Africa, but also things like costs of living and living standards are considered to be very high in South Africa.
For Naomi and her husband, Danny, they're happy with their choice.
Some of the metrics that we use to decide like whether or not this is our permanent place is education, cost of living, how much we're enjoying the place. And so far, that's ticking all the boxes.
All right, so we can see that even in a place like South Africa, where there's a majority black political class, that their logo or motto is "kill the white people," that these South Africans would actually rather return back to South Africa than stay in the United States. Now, I don't know what that says about the United States, but it does seem to say a lot. Now, also, we've got this of course, the war's been over. Trump won. We won. We won the war, like last week, remember? Mission accomplished, which kind of makes me think, since he did the mission accomplished thing, that it's going to go on forever. I don't want to think that. But we know what happened last time when we declared mission accomplished 2 weeks after starting a war in the Middle East, and then like 30 years later, we were still there. And in fact, U.S. soldiers are being killed in Iraq, like very recently, like this week or last week or whatever. So, I mean, I thought we had left those countries, but now, no, U.S. soldiers are still being killed in Iraq. Now Trump is demanding help from, our supposed foreign allies. We'll check this out real quick, what he has to say.
Really, I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory, because it is their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
Now, I would say if you start a fight and your friends want to help you, that's a good friend, but you can't start a fight with someone in a bar and then demand that your friends back you up when you started the fight. Kind of. I think that's how it goes. And then this story was kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know how much we can trust ABC News, but it seems that there is some legitimacy to the claim that, according to the depositions and other materials released as part of a civil lawsuit related to the funding cuts, Doge relied on ChatGPT to identify more than $100 million in grants related to diversity, equity, and inclusion that were later canceled. So, I mean, I want to believe that Elon Musk is a super genius and he did it all himself and he got no help from the government, and it's just this big brain here that's, running everything. But it seems that, even he's relying on ChatGPT, which is very unreliable, especially when it comes to, firing hundreds of thousands or thousands of people from their job with no recourse to another job and stuff like that. No, I mean, personally, I think we should cut all the jobs, but probably starting with the higher level jobs first, because those people do less. Right. So, all right, we're going to get into this woman president thing. Now, as far as the war goes, I've been really, I guess, kind of going with the Simon Dixon analysis. Now, while Alex Jones has good on-the-ground analysis of especially what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, I think he has one of the best analysis of actual military tactical analysis of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz itself. I think that Simon Dixon's overall view, I watched this like 3-hour long lecture, and also his debate with Ryan Dawson. I think that his view really is kind of like the most comprehensive view, because he's looking at it from all levels. And I might be biased a little bit because his view does indicate that, like what I've been saying, that the president isn't really in charge, and there are forces way beyond what the president can do that are causing this war to happen. And also, I like the way that he integrates the religious aspect of the war, and that, yes, the Israelis and the Zionist Christians and the Muslims and even the Persian Iranians are religiously motivated on the ground level. Like the soldiers that are actually fighting in combat and all this other stuff, they are religiously motivated. But there's also a higher level where it's basically the US and Israel versus China, India, Russia, Brazil, the BRICS nations, right? And more countries seem to be joining the BRICS nations because they're basically creating a monetary, you can say that they're communist and they're creating what's it called, a planned and controlled economic system. But one thing they're not doing is blowing everybody up. And people are very amenable to that. When you don't blow them up, then they want to work with you, because people can kind of see the repeated history of the United States that first we work with you, then we blow you up. And then we tell everybody that you were the evil one. And then if you try to say that no, actually, or prove or show in any way that actually no, that we were working with you, then we come back and blow you up again. And I think the world in and of itself is getting tired of that. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misreading the room or whatever, but it definitely does seem that the world is getting tired of that. So I would definitely suggest to check out Simon Dixon's work here. Like I'm saying, he's got one coming up today, looks like. So that's where I'm coming from a lot on this analysis, that, like I said, I'm biased because he shares my view that there are levels way above the president that dictate foreign policy, domestic policy, even, and especially monetary policy, right? So then that brings me to the question of, should we elect a female president? Now, if you watch my last video when I was talking about DEI and stuff and how Obama was more of a psychological demarcation line in political history of the United States, I think in a similar way, now this is hypothetical, but in a similar way, electing a female president would psychologically trigger a similar type of event. And it would, in the same way that you can see Obama as being kind of like the culmination of the civil rights movement, right? You could see electing a female president as the culmination of the feminist movement. And now, in a similar ways, it would do a lot of similar things, right? Women can no longer claim that America is a sexist country, because we can do the same thing that everybody did with Obama. Oh, hey, if we're so racist, why is there a woman in charge? Right? I'm sorry. If we're so racist, why is a black guy in charge? We can say the same thing. If we're so sexist, why is a woman in charge of the country right now? And like that would be great for, you know, a lot of content creators and things like that, and political analysts, in the sense that we haven't done it before, and feminists can keep making this claim that, oh, America's sexist, they'll never elect a female president. And if we look at what would have happened if we elected, say, for instance, Kamala Harris, and then you take the Simon Dixon view that these events, the war and the recession and all these other things, were basically inevitable outcomes of geopolitics, that right now Kamala Harris would be to blame for this war, right? And then all these claims that feminists and liberals make, right, that if only a woman were in charge, everyone would be singing Kumbaya and there would be no wars, and that would have been dead. That would have been dead. The Republican Party would have still had some legs to stand on, right? It would have been clear that, you know, both parties are working with AIPAC, and that, you know, basically on the geopolitical front, nothing would have changed. You know, we would have still moved forward with these wars, the war in Ukraine, you know, the trying to take over Venezuela, and of course the Iran war now, right? And if Simon Dixon's thesis is true, then these were inevitable outcomes of money powers and national powers that were pressured basically into doing this because they're fighting for dominance and control through their different financial systems, right? So, like I'm saying, a lot of people really want to believe that the president is all powerful and he has all this veto power and he can change all these laws and all this other stuff. And I'm sorry, I just don't believe that it's true. It's basically a figurehead, a psychological figurehead that was used to replace the king in European culture. And in fact, you know, when George Washington won the Revolution, they even offered for him to become the king of the United States, and he turned it down because he was a Freemason, and they believed in stepping down into greatness. And once you've been a master, then you step down to past master, and there's a humility involved in being a leader. And that's one of the things that the Freemasons do teach. That is a positive, you know, aspect of their belief system, right? And then another, I think, psychological aspect will be that, you know, say, for instance, one of these guys that works at Target here, right, that can't get a date, right, because the women don't want to date him because he works at Target, he might look around and see a female president, and the only reason why that guy that works at Target is a liberal is because he went to school, public school in the United States. And he might look around and start scratching his chin and saying, hey, well, wait a minute. I thought women were oppressed. I've got a female manager and I've got a female like coworkers that are getting paid sometimes more than me, right? And I've got, you know, female teachers at my school and female professors at my college, and females are making more money than the NBA on OnlyFans, and maybe women aren't as oppressed as I was led to believe, right? And it might trigger a similar reaction as the Obama reaction, right? And then again, you know, when people are making political arguments going forward, all of those questions will be nullified by the fact that yes, Kamala Harris would have definitely continued the Ukraine war. Would she have started the Iran war? There's a high probability, according to Simon Dixon's analysis and other geopolitical analysis, that this was an inevitable war, right? And then Republicans would not be to blame for all this stuff, right? Then plus, since she is a minority, also Tulsi Gabbard is a minority too, then it would double check, just like the leftists do. We get a double check. It's a minority and a woman. America's not racist. America's not sexist, right? Now, can women please stop saying that, right? Stop saying that women would not start a war. Stop saying that women would not, you know, cut welfare or do this or do whatever they say, that if there was a woman president, she wouldn't do this. Everyone would be happy and everyone would be, you know, twerking on OnlyFans and loving it, right? So basically, that's just the point, right? Because at this point, you know, I know the Republicans don't want to hear this and they want to say, oh, it would have been 100 times worse if Kamala Harris got no. They're both centrist. Both the Republicans and the Democrats, they start off their messaging. Now, I got this from Academic Agent's book, basically, that they start off their messaging to their base, and this is why the base is confused. Because when you're running in the primaries, you have to have a strong either right-wing or left-wing message when you start off in the primaries. So when you go into the primaries, you want to come off as Republican as possible. You want to, oh, I hate abortion, I hate foreigners, I hate the rich, I hate taxes, I hate sending our boys to wars, right? But then as you move up into the general election, you have to move to the center in order to maximize, you know, the popular vote, right? So essentially, both parties are centrist, like kind of like basically a centrist party. It's the uniparty, whatever you want to call it, the uniparty, the fake left-right paradigm, whatever you want to call it. I think the way that Academic Agent explains it is very simple and very compelling. You know, that when you're running for a Democrat, you basically want to sound like a socialist in the primaries, and then when you get to the general election, you're basically the same as Ronald Reagan. And it's the same thing for a Republican. You want to sound like, you know, basically far right when you're running for the primaries, and then by the time you get to the general election, you're basically Obama, right? And I think that's where the disconnect, where people are seeing, is that it's the uniparty. Everyone knows it's the uniparty. They're centrist, and that's what happens. So to say that, oh, Kamala would have been so much worse, not really. Because there's no doubt in my mind that she would have continued at least the Ukraine war. And they probably would have done similar stuff in Latin America, maybe in a more clandestine way, so it didn't attract as much attention. You know, Trump does love to showboat, it seems like, and he likes to attract attention to our military operations in the most painful way possible and the most braggadocious way possible, with very little humility and very little sentiment for human life of the opposing side, which I suppose that plays to the base of the right, of the people that don't like foreigners and all that other stuff. But, you know, just in essence, it wouldn't have been that much different. And anyone that's trying to tell you that it is, they just basically have some type of either financial or political interest in either the Republican or Democrat Party. And I don't want to see Republicans win. I don't want to see Democrats win. I want to see Americans winning. Like, that's who we should be worrying about, is winning. You know, it's like the "Are you winning, son?" meme, right? If we're worried about Republicans winning, or we're worried about Democrats winning, we're not worrying about our Americans winning. And that really should be the message of either political party. I know it's cheesy as F. It is. But the fact of the matter is that if we had a woman president, a lot of these questions would be put to bed, as far as would women do wars. And again, I think it would wake up a lot of men in a similar way that Obama woke up a lot of white people, right? That, hey, wait a minute. Maybe these women aren't as oppressed as they're claiming that they are, right? So that's the video. Thanks for watching if you did. Have a good day and peace.